Folks, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser met today with Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi to talk about the federal law enforcement officers and the National Guard being put on the streets in Washington, D.C. This was a social media post put out by that idiot Pam Bondi. Quote, I just concluded a productive meeting with D.C. Mayor Bowser at the Department of Justice. We agreed that there is nothing more important than keeping residents and tourists in Washington, D.C. safe from deadly crime. At President Trump's direction, the Justice Department will work closely with D.C. City Government and D.C. Police Department to make Washington, D.C. safe again. Now, we all know that's filled with lies because D.C.'s crime has been dropping dramatically. And so you got all these people who are running their mouths talking about, oh my God, how awful it is living in D.C. I've been here 15 years. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So here's some stats. Violent crime, down 26%. Robbery, down 28%. Sex abuse, down 50%. Interesting. Again, when you look at those type of numbers, you got to ask yourself the question, what the hell are they talking about? But see, you also need to understand something. Donald Trump constantly, first time he was sitting in the Oval Office, complained about how awful D.C. was. It looked awful. It was trash. On and on and on. He was doing all those sort of things. That's what he was doing. That's what he was doing. And he was saying how bad things were. And then, of course, when he ran against Vice President Kamala Harris, saying the same thing, how awful things were, how bad things were. Things were just terrible. D.C. is falling apart. How awful it is. I mean, that was his whole thing over and over and over again. So it's no surprise we see what's going on right now. But, I mean, let's just be honest. If we want to talk about crime in D.C., if we want to talk about where the most criminals are located, then we really should look no further than 2 blocks from where I sit. Because that's really the crime. That's where yellow tape should actually be wrapped around the White House, crime scene tape, because that's what you have in D.C. I saw this graphic on social media. I loved it. It said heaviest crime zone in D.C. And this is what they were referring to. You see they have the White House circled. Come on, man, let's go. iPad. Thank you. Come on. I love this. They have the White House circle because that's really what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a thug in chief. You're dealing with a twice impeached, criminally convicted felon, con man who is raping and pillaging the country, who is selling access to the president, to the office, and guess what? Republicans are letting him do it. And so now what they're busy with, they're busy posting all their photos of black people being arrested. They claim overnight, oh my goodness, all these different people who have been arrested. And then you got the likes of Jeanine Pirro, who is of course, the U.S. Attorney of Washington, D.C., who's making all of her comments. And in fact, we're going to play for one of these. I mean, so there was a news conference and a question was asked about, okay, let's talk about crime. How do you lower crime? And here's the response of the former Fox News show host who's a massive liar. Go ahead.
My prosecutors.
You just walked through the changes you'd like to see from the punitive aspect. What about preventative? Do you or the president plan to do anything to address the root causes of crime in D.C., such as truancy?
My job is to try to heal the victims and prosecute the criminal. Everybody else can deal with rehabilitating the individual. I honestly am not concerned about why they commit crimes. My concern is if they commit crimes. My concern is the victims of the crimes. That's my job as a U.S. attorney. Go ahead.
But just follow up on that quickly.
That's interesting. This tweet was put out that I found to be quite interesting. If you're serious about crime prevention, you don't cut $1 billion from D.C.'s budget or put language in your signature bill prohibiting the Department of Justice from funding community violence intervention and prevention initiative programs. Not that anyone will call you out for it. You see this right here? No funds made available under this subsection shall be made available to community violence intervention and prevention initiative programs. So you care about crime. So let me give y'all a peek into the empty mind of Donald Trump. Typically these conversations are off the record, but he lies so much. He lies so much that he's forfeited that. So in his first term, I was invited to 3 television anchor meetings with that idiot. I went to the first 2, did not make the third one. I had a speech, hadn't been invited to any others. So in one of these discussions, we are sitting there and they're talking about a number of issues they're talking about, okay? And in that meeting, somebody brings up Chicago. Now, what happened was he was going on and on and on and on and on. He was just going on and on and on, talking about other stuff that I didn't think was relevant. Then Chicago came up, and I was like, let's talk about Chicago. So he then begins to go on this tangent, talking about how bad things are in Chicago and how when then Mayor Rahm Emanuel came to meet with him, Emanuel was talking about education and economics. Trump goes, Rahm, this is what he says. That's not going to solve your crime problem. It's not. See, the fundamental problem for Republicans, especially these white conservative Republicans, they don't actually want to address the underlying problems of crime. They just want to incarcerate people. They just want to throw them in jail. They just want to lock them up. See, that's their strategy. Their strategy has always been lock them up, throw away the key. We ain't dealing with the real problem. No, they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with that. And so he then goes on to talk about how, all these things you need to do and how you need to do it, and, and just, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, the hell is he talking about? So then he says, when we were leaving, we were going to the airport, there was this one cop, you could tell he was tough. He was tough. And he was ordering people around, and he clearly was the man in charge. And I said to my people, and he said, the guy came up to me, he says, Mr. Trump, we can fix this problem in Chicago in a week. That's all it'll take. And Trump said, he was like, I told Rahm, that needs to be your next police superintendent. And we passed his name on to the mayor. So yours truly goes, well, tell me exactly what is your plan to deal with crime in Chicago? Y'all, he gives me one word. He goes, tough. I said, I'm sorry? He goes, tough. I said, tough is a word. Tough is not a plan. Tough. And it was at that point, I had a notepad, I put my pen in it, closed it. I said, I'm good, and folded my arms. That literally was the dumbest shit I ever heard. Donald Trump, see, I need y'all to understand that exchange explains what's happening in D.C. Tough. We're going to be tough on them. Yeah, we're going to be tough. We're going to knock some head. See, that white cop, and we know it's a white cop in Chicago, what he was saying was, we can knock some heads. Throw them in jail. Gonna be tough. That's the plan. See, they don't ever want to talk about root crime. In fact, this morning, and y'all know I don't watch Morning Joe. Ever since Mika got in her feelings, when I talked about that reality show on sorority sisters and we blasted, you don't have to watch. After I jacked her up, they ain't invited me back since. So I ain't been back on Morning Joe since 2015. So y'all gotta understand, these white producers getting their feelings. Just like I ain't been on ABC This Week in 4 years since I cracked Governor Chris Christie. But this morning on MSNBC, there was a conversation. And it was a conversation, Joe Scarborough, Simone Sanders, and what's happening in Washington, D.C. Actually came up. And it turned into a rather spirited conversation, y'all. I'm trying to pull it up right now because I want to play about 2.5 minutes of it. It was very interesting. It was very interesting because I need you to understand, and I need y'all to be very sensitive when you hear certain things, and when you hear white people, Democrats or Republicans, when they talk about crime and oh my God, and how people are feeling so unsafe and just how hard things are. It's amazing when they start using language like that and you start going, well, exactly what are y'all talking about? Because see, they start describing like the entire city is on fire and as if there's just mayhem and oh my God, it's going. I'm not denying there's crime because hell, there's crime in rural America. These things are happening in rural America every single day. But you see, the response to crime by white folks is always more cops. Now, I just laid out to y'all that when we talk about crime, it's called preventative measures. Why is Baltimore's crime so low? We're going to have the mayor later this week. Baltimore's crime is down because the mayor enacted a series of policies that addressed the root cause of crime. He wasn't fixated on just sticking more cops on the street. He understood root cause. But I want y'all to listen. Listen to Joe Scarborough speak from his way. First of all, let me be real clear. Joe Scarborough speaking from his white perch. I want y'all to look at the background. Joe Scarborough, first of all, his show is based out of D.C. But for the most part, him and Mika, who are married, do the show from their house in Florida. So what your ass know about Washington, D.C. every single day? Listen to this exchange.
You don't think more police make streets safer?
No, Joe. I'm a black woman in America. I do not always think that more police make streets safer. When you walk down the streets of Georgetown, you don't see a police officer on every corner, but you don't feel unsafe. So what is it about talking about places like Southeast D.C., right, Ward 8, if you will, that people say, well, we need more officers to make us safe? I think we have to rethink what safety means in America.
Well, you know, there have been black city council members in New York City when people were talking about defunding the police, saying the people we represent are the people who need police officers the most, as safety officers in schools need police officers the most, so our children can walk from their homes to school without being stopped, 5, 10 times by drug dealers or people that are going to assault them. I don't think this is an issue of black versus white. When you're talking about safety, there are a lot of black Americans who don't feel safe in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and when they hear people talking about defunding the police, it freaks them out. I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
Defund the police is not good. I never supported defund. I think you're making a good point, Joe. I want to be able to call the police in my neighborhood. When they come, I don't want them to think that I'm a suspect. But what we're talking about is that the President of the United States is saying that there is a crime emergency in Washington, D.C. An emergency could be anything that he says it is. So from his definition, maybe there is. The data would say otherwise. But the issue that people keep citing is about the young people, the carjackings, right? The kids running into a CVS and taking things out the CVS. That is juvenile crime. And so how are the police officers or the National Guard going to address the issue of juvenile crime? And until we start talking about the policy, let's talk about the crime bill that D.C. passed last year that could be strengthened, right? Let's talk about that. But Donald Trump is using rhetoric and playing on the real fears that some people have because of what they've seen on the news or maybe what they themselves have experienced. And
it's not what they've seen on the news. It's not what they've seen.
That was a long conversation. But I just want you to understand how mighty uneducated and Joe Scarborough is, and I want y'all to recognize how he tried to slide in defund the police. So if you go to Google and you type in defund the police, AI is going to give you an overview. And see, Joe Scarborough committed the biggest problem that we always see. This is what it says. The movement to defund the police is a call to reallocate or redirect funding from police departments to other community-based services and initiatives. And what does it say right here? Reinvesting in community-based strategies. This means shifting resources towards violence prevention and interruption, housing, healthcare, income support, employment, education, and other programs that address the root causes of crime and promote community well-being, limiting the scope of policing. This involves rethinking the role of police in society and relying less on them to address social issues such as homelessness, mental health crises, and substance abuse. Arguments in favor of defunding the police. Addressing systemic issues. Proponents argue that police departments are often tasked with addressing social issues they are not trained or equipped to handle, and that focusing on community-based solutions can more effectively address the root causes of crime. That was what the call for defund the police was all about. But see, the right took that and ran with it, and a lot of Democrats fell in the line. And so the narrative became, get rid of cops. No. And see, when Joe Scarborough says, well, black city council members in New York City will say, our people want police. Yeah, Joe, the phrasing is called to protect and serve. When somebody black calls 911, they do want the cops show up. But see, Joe, when black people call 911, what they don't want to happen is we end up getting shot and killed. What they don't want, Joe, is when black people call the cops, we don't want the cops to show up, beat the shit out of people. When we call the cops, we don't want the cops to show up and shake people down. See, this is how, I just want y'all to understand how white national media loves to spin this. So I'm going to issue a challenge. If any of y'all watch ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, I dare you to time, if it even comes up, how much time is spent on the root cause of crime in Washington, D.C., New York City, and other cities. Let's see if it even comes up. I put $1,000, ain't gonna come up. I guarantee you that these shows will call Mayor Brandon Scott, but they won't ask him in detail, how did you lower crime in Baltimore? They ain't gonna ask that question. They ain't gonna do that. They're not gonna do it. They're not gonna ask him, well, Mayor, how is it that you have gotten, and this was the statement that he released. Mayor Scott said when it comes to public safety in Baltimore, he should turn off the right-wing propaganda. Look at the facts. Baltimore is the safest it's been in over 50 years. Homicides are down 28% this year alone, reaching the lowest level of any year on record. We still have real work to do to build on this progress, but that work starts and ends here in Baltimore with the local, state, and federal partners who have gotten us this far. And he goes on to explain all this sort of stuff. See, y'all, Joe Scarborough don't want to have that question. Don't want to have that conversation. Because see, first of all, let's remember, Joe Scarborough's a Republican. So he ain't no Democrat, he ain't no progressive. He a white conservative, okay? So, but as white progressives, just like Joe Scarborough, think the same way. See, if you listen, Joe Scarborough talk about, all of my friends, people hit me quietly, and they say they can't go here and go there. Do y'all actually think the white folk who hit Joe Scarborough live in high crime areas of D.C.? He was sitting talking about, people I know, they can't even, go to. Matter of fact, I'm just gonna play it for you. Let me just play the silly bullshit. And of course, a Charlie Kirk retweeted this. Watch this.
You can walk 40, 50, 60 blocks in Manhattan at 2 in the morning and feel safe. And yet in Washington, D.C., I've got friends that worked in the Biden White House. I have friends that work in the media that say they don't feel safe walking 3 blocks in Washington, D.C. Why can't Washington be fixed, despite what the crime numbers say? Because people aren't feeling it.
You know, often it's the perception of being safe or unsafe that affects cities. And I think that's what's happened in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has 3,400 police officers. They're undermanned. The National Guard will provide a presence. And sometimes that's all you need to clear a block or clear a person's mind that it's okay to walk that block. Police presence, or the symbols of police presence. So we'll see how it goes.
Do y'all actually think the white people texting Joe Scarborough can't walk more than 1 block? Do y'all know how many blocks right now where we are, we in D.C.? I have walked 8 blocks that way, 8 blocks that way, 6 blocks that way, 8 blocks that way. In the daytime, in the evening, at nighttime, at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't, oh my God, what's gonna happen? This is the bullshit that white media loves to project. In fact, they put out charts all the time that shows you where the crime takes place in a lot of y'all cities, in a lot of cities. And you know where it mostly is? Typically, it's like 2 areas of town. So what Joe Scarborough is doing is feeding right into the narrative that, oh my God, DC's on fire, you can't visit, it's terrible. Oh, the tourists, and you can't go, it's awful. You can't go to the grocery store, you can't go. That's where the feeding frenzy comes in. So Scarborough is literally sounding just like the crazy ass fool in the Oval Office. It's the exact same thing, y'all. This is the game. This is the game that they play to justify. And see, Simone was trying to be nice. Simone was, y'all, she was protecting her check. Because anybody else who, and see, that's why there's a reason why they don't call me. Because see, they want nice collegial conversations. I'm not going to have the conversations. Because if I was there, I would have said, Joe, please tell me, where do your friends live? No, Joe, don't give me general. Give me zip codes. And I would have sat there and I would have pulled up, let's pull the stats up. Let's pull the stats up in a zip code where your friends live. Let's see where the crime takes place. So we know he lying. And then Mike Barnacle, well, it's the perception. If y'all want to Google Mike Barnacle and race, he wrote some of the most racist shit in the Boston Globe you could think of. So I need y'all to understand that they have established this narrative. I need y'all to understand it's big cities, it's Democrat-run cities, it's inner cities, black. So we're going to combat crime, but we're going to pull resources that can alleviate crime. So their answer is to pour resources into law enforcement, withdraw resources that prevents crime, that deals with the root cause, and then say, well, we fixed it. We cleaned the streets up because we locked up a bunch of people. That literally is their thinking. Somebody had to challenge Chicago Mayor Brendan Jackson on this, and he tried to be nice about it. Then finally, he had to go ahead and let him know exactly how he felt.
Illinois National Guard refused to follow a presidential order.
We're going to go to the next question.
Or have you asked, or your administration asked them to inform you in case that they're activated by the president?
Well, let me just be very clear. I have not spoken to the governor within the last 24 hours. I do believe that Donald Trump is intimidating. I think
okay, no interruption.
So let me just answer that. I do appreciate.
Audios, please get it right. I need to hear Brandon Johnson. Please. All right. Do y'all have it? Play it.
You're the one.
Thank you.
Let's move on, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Who is not keeping the people of Chicago safe.
All right, we're going to go to the next question. Thanks.
What do you say to Donald Trump? How did you feel when Donald Trump called you incompetent? What did you feel?
All right, he just addressed this. Thanks.
Please answer that question. If you would.
Okay, fine. Since you are begging, I do believe that Donald Trump is intimidated. I think you're begging.
No interruption.
So let me just answer that. I do appreciate you begging. So I will just say it like this, that the president has always been intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men. And so, of course, he would speak in those petite and puerile terms because he's small.
Thanks.
Right.
Here's Justin.
That's how you answer. He's small. All right, folks, let's bring my panel right now. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA, joining us from Washington, D.C. Randy Bryant, entrepreneur, author, speaker from D.C. as well. Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney out of Los Angeles. Glad to have all three of y'all here. Mustafa, I'll start with you. It's abundantly clear what we're seeing here. We know what's going on. This is Donald Trump trying to play the strong man. This is Donald Trump trying to say, I'm tough. That's all this is. It's for show. This is about distracting from Jeffrey Epstein. That's all this is about.
Yeah, and I wrote about it actually yesterday. You can check it out in Word in Black. But it is also about the erasure of self-determination. You know, it is about taxation without representation, which has always been an issue that folks in the district have had to deal with. You know, it's interesting when you have these individuals who have spent no time in D.C., real D.C., right? Not just on Capitol Hill, but actually spending time walking in communities and talking to communities about their sets of experiences and the beauty that exists inside of Washington, D.C. Now, I know what I'm talking about because I actually wrote a bill before for Bobby Rush, me and John Marshall, on how do you actually lower crime? How do you lower gun violence? And you hit it on the head, Roland, because it is about education, it is about housing, it is about transit, it is about healthcare, and it is about jobs. So when you cut those programs, you are making sure that you are creating a chaotic situation. You are trying to fuel the narrative, that false narrative that he continues to push forward on. So everybody should really be very clear about what this game is. If you want to, you can come to my neighborhood. You can watch. I live east of the river. There are white folks and black folks pushing their children around and, across the community. You see people actually out walking and jogging, at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night who have no problems whatsoever. So, yes, there are those pockets of challenges that exist inside of D.C. But if you were serious, let me say it again, if you were serious about addressing those challenges, you would sit down with the mayor and ask the mayor, what are the things that have been working? Because you have been able to lower the incidence of violence, and what have been the challenges? And then work with your folks on Capitol Hill to make sure that the resources that are necessary to address what the gaps are. But when you're not serious, then you just demonize the city. You demonize the leadership that is there so that as once again, you can continue to erase the self-determination that folks have been working so diligently to have in place.
Well, they're not serious, Randy.
Well, they're not serious because they are looking to see how many Black people they can put away. You spoke earlier about why are they not looking at, and it's because they see Black people as criminals. When white people commit crimes, they see it as a white person who committed a crime, but they see Black people as just criminals when they do demonize us. And so it's not about giving us programs that prevent crimes, creating programs that get kids off the streets and give them something to do. It is about how can we get them in jail. I think we want to round up our people.
Joe, they, of course, put National Guard troops in Los Angeles. They claim success. All they did was sit around, frankly, most of the time. But people need to understand what the whole goal here. This is, I'm the strong guy. I'm the big guy. This is how I'm running the whole show. It's all a farce.
And for them, it's about being, quote, tough on crime, but that's low-hanging fruit. It wins elections. The public is very, very forgiving, even when you get it wrong. The crime bill got it wrong. So many things got it wrong. You over-police, you over-jail, you privatize prisons, and all of these other things, all of the above. And people almost never suffer political consequences because of it. They came out to LA, they did their thing. They basically guarded the 2 federal buildings and pretty much nothing else. And fortunately, that seems to be going the way it needs to be in the courts. Washington, D.C., because, to Mustafa's point, because of the lack of taxation without representation, you have to go through a little bit of a different window legally, but still there's an argument that under Section 740 of the Home Rule Act, this is not an emergency condition, particularly when you're in a situation where crime is down. But again, and you've got violence down in general, you've got specific crimes down, specific violent crimes down. Again, it's about creating this narrative, making it into something that it's not, so that people can once again be distracted. And there's an irony with this too, because a lot of times these guys, are about self-determination and home rule, and you guys handle your own or whatever else. Well, here they are trying to handle their own, and now you're stepping into it and doing something else. Baltimore is a great bellwether for what can happen when you actually put seeds in the ground. Put seeds in the ground of prevention, et cetera. And what he's got to be reminded of is that this actually is supposed to help even the police that you say that you care so much about. Because ultimately, if there's more prevention, you're going to have a safer community, and that's going to keep even our law enforcement officers safer. They really think they can come in town, do what they want to do with no seeds planted, with no seeds of goodwill planted, deposited, and now you make a withdrawal. All you're going to do is create chaos and conflict. And at the end of the day, my final irony is that Trump is able to come in and do what he needs to do and employ the National Guard here, but he didn't find a way to do it on January the 6th.
Oh, yeah, that was just so hard. I didn't have the authority, but all of a sudden he has the authority. All right, y'all.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.